Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time on the Knights Templar. You know, right? The warrior monks shrouded in mystery and legend. But we're going beyond the myths today.
Going beyond the myths.
Yeah. Using a work by Professor Malcolm Barber to uncover the real story of these knights, their battlefield exploits.
Their incredible wealth.
Oh yeah, and a downfall that still has people debating centuries later.
What's so fascinating is that the Templars embody this almost paradoxical image. You know, on the one hand, you have this vision of the noble knight,
Yeah,
upholding chivalry and fighting for a righteous cause. But on the other hand, they were also figures of immense power and sometimes ruthless ambition.
Professor Barber dives right into that. He talks about this almost stereotypical view of the Templar Knight as this proud, even arrogant warrior.
Proud and arrogant.
Right. Was there any truth to that image, or is that just a myth?
Well, looking at historical accounts, it's easy to see where that perception comes from.
I bet.
Take the Battle of the Springs of Cresson in 1187, for example. The Templar master Gerard of Rydford.
Gerard of Rydford, yeah, basically ignored sound advice and led his knights right into a devastating ambush.
Oh, wow. So a classic case of pride before the fall.
Exactly. Chroniclers like Ernol really don't hold back in their criticism. They paint Gerard as reckless, overconfident, ultimately responsible for the massacre that followed.
Makes you think about that fine line between bravery and recklessness, doesn't it? Especially in the context of medieval warfare. I mean, they didn't exactly have risk assessments back then.
That's a great point. We have to remember these chronicles were written in a time when chivalry and military prowess were absolutely paramount. What might seem like arrogance to us
Right.
could very well have been perceived as boldness or unwavering faith in their own abilities at the time.
So how reliable are these chronicles as a picture of the Templars? Should we take them with a grain of salt?
Well, that's the thing about historical sources, isn't it? They offer invaluable insights,
For sure.
but they're also products of their time, often reflecting the biases and agendas of the authors.
So it's not as simple as good guys versus bad guys then.
Precisely. And this tendency to portray the Templars in a negative light, particularly when things went wrong. It's a pattern that you see throughout history.
Yeah.
They became an easy target to blame.
Well, yeah, they were the defenders of the Holy Land, heavily funded and equipped. If they failed, it reflected poorly, not just on them, but on the entire Christian cause.
Absolutely. Chroniclers like William of Tyre, for example, were quite critical of the Templars. He believed they had strayed from their humble origins, becoming too powerful,
Too powerful.
straying from their original purpose.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Their success, their very effectiveness in fulfilling their mission, might have actually sown the seeds for their eventual downfall.
That's a fascinating observation.
Yeah.
Their wealth and influence, initially seen as signs of divine favor,
Yeah.
could also have bred resentment and suspicion, making them vulnerable to accusations later on.
It's a good reminder that even in the medieval world, perception and image mattered a great deal.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember that the Templars weren't just about individual heroes or villains. This was a complex, multifaceted organization.
Oh, absolutely. They weren't just knights on horseback charging into battle. Professor Barber makes it clear that the Templar organization was surprisingly sophisticated, almost like a multinational corporation centuries ahead of its time.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
They had a hierarchical structure with the master at the top,
At the top.
regional provinces throughout Europe and the Middle East, and a complex network of officials responsible for everything from finances to logistics.
And here's something that really surprised me. Most Templars never even set foot in the Holy Land.
That's right. Over two-thirds of them remained in Europe, managing the vast estates, finances, and administrative affairs of the order. They were the backbone of the organization.
So we're talking about lawyers, accountants, stewards, even priests.
Exactly.
A far cry from the romanticized image of the warrior monk.
Their daily lives were more about managing resources, ensuring the smooth running of the order,
Right.
supporting their brethren in the Holy Land. It gives us a glimpse into the true complexity of their world.
Fascinating to think about these different facets of Templar life. Okay, so we know they had castles in the Holy Land. What about back in Europe? What did their headquarters look like?
They were called preceptories, and they were unique. They weren't quite monasteries with their focus on contemplation and prayer, and they weren't quite traditional manors focused solely on agricultural production. They were a blend of both, serving both spiritual and practical purposes.
Professor Barber mentions this interesting detail about the South Witham Preceptory excavation in England.
South Witham.
Yeah. They even found a piece of pottery all the way from Syria.
Wow.
It's like a tangible link to the East. A reminder that even in rural England, the Templars were connected to this vast network spanning continents.
It's a powerful reminder of their global reach and influence. They were a truly international organization with connections that extended far beyond their military activities in the Holy Land.
But then this seemingly invincible organization met a dramatic and sudden end. In 1307, the French king orders the arrest of all Templars in France on charges of heresy and blasphemy.
Heresy and blasphemy.
Yeah, it almost feels like something out of a conspiracy thriller.
The swiftness and severity of the accusations were indeed shocking, sent shockwaves throughout Europe, and marked a dramatic turning point in the Templars' history.
So what was really behind these charges? Was it truly about heresy, or was there something else at play?
Well, that's a question that historians have been debating for centuries. Some believe that Philip I of France,
Philip IV.
yeah, known for his ruthlessness and constant need for funds, saw the Templars' wealth as a convenient solution to his financial problems.
It's a classic case of follow the money, isn't it?
It certainly seems that way. And the accusations themselves, with their focus on secrecy and alleged rituals,
Right.
played into existing anxieties about heresy and the occult that were prevalent in Europe at the time.
So were the Templars victims of a carefully orchestrated smear campaign? Or was there some truth to the accusations? It seems impossible to know for sure.
That's the challenge with history. We often have to piece together the truth from fragmented and sometimes contradictory evidence. But what's fascinating is that even back then, many people doubted the validity of the charges against the Templars.
Professor Barber quotes a source describing how Templars imprisoned in Egypt refused to convert to Islam even when offered comfort and freedom. It suggests a depth of conviction that makes those forced confessions under torture seem even more dubious.
Exactly. It raises serious questions about the reliability of the evidence used against them and highlights the brutal methods often employed to extract confessions during that era.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground already. From battlefield valor and a sophisticated organizational structure to shocking accusations and a downfall shrouded in mystery. The Knights Templar are truly an enigma.
And we've only just begun to scratch the surface. There's still so much to explore about their beliefs, their influence, and their enduring legacy.
Stay with us as we continue our deep dive into the world of the Knights Templar. There's so much more to uncover. Welcome back. We're digging deeper into the Knights Templar, these warrior monks who went from protecting pilgrims to wielding serious power. It makes you wonder, how did they pull that off? Was it all just about brave knights and winning battles?
Well, while military skill was certainly important, their early success really had more to do with recognizing a need and filling it brilliantly.
Recognizing a need.
Yeah, think about the context. It's the 12th century. The Crusader states where new travel was perilous.
Perilous.
Pilgrims were easy targets for bandits, and even the journey itself was incredibly dangerous.
So when these knights pledged to protect travelers on their journey to the Holy Land, it must have been a huge relief.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about physical protection, it was about peace of mind, which was invaluable in those times. This service quickly caught the attention of powerful figures like King Baldwin II of Jerusalem.
King Baldwin II.
Yeah.
So he saw their potential. But Professor Barber also points out that they got some high-level PR, too. It's almost like a modern-day influencer campaign, except this was from a saint.
Indeed, St. Bernard of Clairvaux,
Yeah.
a hugely influential figure in the church at the time, became a vocal supporter of the Templars. He saw them as the embodiment of the ideal Christian knight devoted to God and to protecting the faithful.
So St. Bernard's endorsement basically gave them instant credibility
Instant credibility.
and helped them attract recruits and donations.
Absolutely. His writings about the Templars really helped shape their public image and cemented their role as defenders of the faith. It was a brilliant, albeit unintentional, marketing campaign.
They had the backing of a saint, a growing reputation, and they were strategically savvy too, right? Professor Barber talks about how they built their network, and it sounds remarkably modern.
They didn't just establish preceptories in major cities, they also focused on rural areas, creating this network that spanned across Europe. This allowed them to control resources, recruit members, and amass wealth from a variety of sources.
It sounds almost like a franchise model,
A franchise model.
with each preceptory contributing to the larger organization.
It's a good comparison. Each preceptory was essentially a self-sufficient unit, but they were all connected to the central command, contributing financially and providing manpower when needed.
But they needed more than just knights and resources, right? Managing all of this must have required serious administrative talent.
You're absolutely right. Their financial operations in particular were incredibly complex. Professor Barber describes them as medieval fintech disruptors.
Medieval fintech disruptors.
And it's an apt description.
Okay, hold on. Medieval fintech, that's a bit mind-blowing. How did that even work?
Well, they offered services that were revolutionary for the time.
Like what?
For example, they provided a system for the safe transfer of funds across long distances. Imagine a pilgrim needing to travel with a large sum of money.
Right.
It was far safer to deposit it with the Templars in one city and withdraw it at another preceptory along their route.
So it's like a medieval Western Union, or an early prototype of modern banking.
Precisely. They also offered loans, often to monarchs and nobles, which further increased their influence and power.
Wow. So they were knights, bankers, and landowners. Talk about a diverse portfolio. But all of this wealth and power must have made them some enemies.
You're right. Their success bred envy and suspicion. As their influence grew, so did the scrutiny from those who saw them as a threat, particularly as the Crusader states began to weaken.
It's that old adage again. The higher you climb, the harder you fall.
And their fall was indeed dramatic. Those accusations of heresy and blasphemy, as we discussed earlier, ultimately led to their demise.
But the charges themselves still seem so outlandish. I'm curious, what was the social and religious climate like in Europe at the time? Was there something that made these accusations resonate with people?
The early 14th century was a time of significant social and religious upheaval. There were widespread fears of heresy, witchcraft, secret societies. The Black Death had ravaged Europe just decades earlier, leaving a sense of fear and uncertainty in its wake.
So in this climate of fear and suspicion, the Templars, with their secrecy and immense wealth, they became an easy target for those looking for a scapegoat.
Precisely. And Philip IV of France, with his own financial and political motivations, was more than willing to exploit these fears to his advantage.
It's a chilling reminder that history can be manipulated to serve those in power.
Indeed. And in the case of the Templars, the consequences were devastating. Their arrest, the forced confessions obtained through torture, and their ultimate dissolution marked a truly dark chapter in medieval history.
It's a reminder of how quickly fortunes can change, and how fragile even the most powerful institutions can be.
And it raises profound questions about how we interpret historical events. Are we truly seeing a clear picture of the past, or are we looking at it through the lens of the victors?
This deep dive is giving me a lot to ponder. But before we get too philosophical, there's one aspect of the Templars we haven't touched on yet: their connection to relics. These objects held immense spiritual power in the medieval world, and the Templars, with their presence in the Holy Land, had access to some of the most sought-after relics in Christendom.
That's an excellent point. Their connection to relics adds another layer of intrigue to their story.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore this fascinating aspect of Templar history and delve deeper into their beliefs, their legacy, and the mysteries that continue to surround them. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of the Knights Templar. We've covered their rise, their complex organization, their shocking downfall, and even their surprisingly modern financial dealings. But now let's talk about something even more intriguing: their connection to relics.
Relics.
Yeah, these weren't just dusty old artifacts. In the medieval world, relics held immense spiritual power.
You're absolutely right. Relics were believed to be imbued with divine grace, capable of offering protection, healing, and even blessings. Owning or possessing a relic, especially one connected to a saint or a biblical figure, was a source of immense prestige and even political power.
And the Templars, with their presence in the Holy Land, they were right at the source, weren't they? They had access to some of the most coveted relics in all of Christendom.
Indeed. Think about it. Fragments of the true cross, pieces of saints, clothing objects associated with biblical figures. These relics weren't just objects. They were seen as tangible connections to the divine.
It's almost like owning a piece of history, but with this added layer of spiritual significance. I can see why people were so fascinated by them.
And the Templars certainly understood the power of relics. They integrated them into their rituals, displayed them in their churches, even carried them into battle. Imagine the impact this must have had on the morale of their troops.
It's incredible, isn't it? These battle-hardened knights facing down their enemies with relics of saints and fragments of the true cross by their side. It must have been a truly awe-inspiring sight.
It speaks to the duality of the Templar identity, the warrior monk devoted to both physical and spiritual combat.
And Professor Barber mentions that the Templars even had their own priests within the order. Did they have a specific role related to these relics?
Absolutely. These priests were responsible for the spiritual well-being of the knights, conducting services, hearing confessions, and providing guidance. They would also play a role in caring for and safeguarding the relics, ensuring their authenticity and conducting rituals associated with them.
So even amidst the fighting and the financial dealings, the Templars maintained this strong spiritual core. It wasn't just about conquest, it was also about faith.
Exactly. For many Templars, joining the order was a deeply personal act of devotion. They believed they were fighting for God, defending the Holy Land, and securing their place in heaven.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful and complex organizations are made up of individuals, each with their own beliefs and motivations. It humanizes the Templars, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it makes their story all the more compelling.
So we've journeyed from the battlefields of the Holy Land to the financial centers of Europe, explored their connection to sacred relics, and even glimpsed the spiritual heart of these warrior monks. It's been quite a journey.
And we've only just scratched the surface. The Knights Templar continue to fascinate and inspire us centuries after their demise. Their story is a tapestry woven with threads of faith, violence, ambition, and mystery.
And those lingering mysteries are part of what makes them so captivating, right?
Right.
The unanswered questions, the debates over their downfall, the speculation about their hidden treasures, it all keeps us coming back for more.
If this deep dive has piqued your curiosity, I encourage you to delve deeper into the historical sources, explore the different interpretations, and form your own conclusions.
Who knows, maybe you'll uncover a new piece of the Templar puzzle. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey of discovery. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.